Welcome back to the Isobar, the highs and lows of meteorology. I am joined by my regular castmates here. We've got Richard over in Detroit, Emily down in Chicago, and I'm Rob, of course, right here in Milwaukee. All three of us chief meteorologists, and all three of us really love to talk about the weather. And lately, guys, Mother Nature has given us so much. I'm not sure we can squeeze it into the next 24 minutes, but let's start with the severe weather. Emily, you want to kick us off?
I will say we've had several rounds of severe thunderstorms in the Chicagoland area over the last, it seems like every week we're at least getting a small little dose, but it still has been, I think if you were to ask any Chicagoan, it feels mild in comparison to last year, the year before, just because we had such record-breaking years with tornadoes. This year, it's all about the wind. So we've had really gusty thunderstorms moving through. And, we had another event recently, early to mid July, that we did have, some power outages associated with that, some pretty strong storms rolling through. But it really feels like things have been fairly calm from a severe weather standpoint across Chicagoland. I know that, up in Milwaukee, you guys have gotten hit a couple times where we've been on the far southern fringe of that, kind of
Right, right.
skirting that state line with Wisconsin. But we've really been pretty lucky, other than a couple gusty storms that very briefly have been knocking out power for folks. And fortunately, when we have had some of those events coming through, it's a lot of times been associated with a cold front. So when that power is knocked out for folks that, are relying on their AC units, it hasn't, I don't think, caused too much of a concern in most cases. So we've been lucky.
That's a really good point because you lose power and you're still, 90 and dew points in the 70s. That's a much bigger problem than you lose power and it's dropped with the dew points back in the 50s and air temperatures in the 70s. You're right, we've been a little more active on this side of the state line. But what's interesting, I think, here is that it hasn't had as big an impact as it might look in the headlines. Back on the 16th, we had five tornadoes, predominantly over into Dodge County, Wisconsin, which is kind of just to the northeast of the Madison metro area, and a few more over into Iowa County and Dane County and toward southwestern Wisconsin as well. Most of the ones, though, in south central, southeastern Wisconsin were low end of the enhanced Fujita scale. I think the strongest was an EF1, which, again, can't be discounted, but lower end. I was on the ground for about 7 miles, which is a pretty long track situation, but hitting areas where it did very little damage, a lot of open fields, a lot of corn crops, which not great for farmers, but obviously not as impactful as if it comes through a suburban area or a residential area. And fortunately, I gotta say, absolutely no injuries, no fatalities. So that's been kind of nice. So in a way, like you were saying, Emily, I think the general perception, despite the activity being about average, is that it's been a little less intense than what we have seen in recent years. Let's go across the lake, check in with Rich. How has Michigan been holding up?
Well, Rob and Emily, to be the bearer of different news, our weather has been very quiet. Now, what we have had, not so much severe storms, but we've had, with the humidity, we've had very heavy downpours. So, in some of these storm clusters that come our way into southeast Michigan, southern Michigan as well, we've had, some very localized heavy rainfall. We'll get 2 or 3 inches of rainfall in an hour for parts of Macomb County, parts of Lapeer County. And most of those counties are pretty rural, but still, that's a lot of rain in a short amount of time. So we haven't seen the power outages that comes with the high winds, but we have seen the heavy downpours with the high humidity. So interesting,
Mhm.
Rob, when last week or the middle part of the month we saw the tornadoes there in Wisconsin, there's a part of me, and this is being honest, is saying I'm glad it's not in Michigan. I mean, it's not good that it's in Wisconsin or in Iowa or in Minnesota or around Chicago for Emily, but there's something in the back of meteorologists' minds that is content to know that it's somewhere else, not in our viewing area. Is that a kooky thing to say?
No,
I
I
get
think we
that.
all feel that. Yeah.
It's almost like the shepherd, you know, the shepherd instinct. Like we've got our peeps that are around our broadcast areas there, and we like to keep them safe. And we would love everybody to be safe, but we can't control that. So I kind of get it. And just to tag on to the heavy rainfall comment, I'm
Mhm.
sure you've had some interesting stuff in that category too. I'm like, but here just, earlier in July, downpours, like just incredible downpours with 4 or 5 and 6 inches worth of rain. This one swath, Manitowoc to about Oshkosh area, totally soaked in, just a couple of hours period, picking up somewhere between 4 and 6 inches worth of rain. Emily, have you seen similar downpour issues your way?
Yes, and I was before you even jumped in there, I was going to piggyback off of what Rich was saying. We've had a lot of flash flood warnings coming out, which is something that, you get occasionally in the Chicagoland area, especially because everything is so urban, especially the closer that you get to the city of Chicago. But we actually did the beginning of July, and I bet you it's that same event that you were mentioning in your area, Rob. But at the United Center, which is where we have a lot of sporting events, a lot of community events, a lot of concerts taking place. So there is a weather station that's just west of the United Center, which is on the west side of Chicago. In a matter of 90 minutes, they picked up nearly 6 inches of rainfall. So we actually had water rescues that were taking place. And it's something that, a lot of people, and it's not just here, it's anywhere. You see a little bit of water going over the road, right? And you think it's no big deal, but you have no idea, even you don't think about, the same roads that you drive on every single day as having a little bit of a dip underneath some of those bridges or underneath those viaducts. And that water gets a lot deeper than you ever think that it would or could. So we did have some water rescues taking place. We had a lot of stalled cars during that early July storm that we had because these storms were back building, meaning that of course, we have, the forward propagation, but they're rebuilding on the backside of that storm. So it's just pouring over the same exact area. And we've had a couple events like that. And unfortunately, a lot of them have been over the city of Chicago or the immediately surrounding suburbs, which of course are very urban as well. So we have had some elements of flash flooding. But with that said, I know when people hear flash flooding, they're thinking of the videos that we saw coming out of Texas of this river rushing down a hill, right? We don't have that here. For here, it's just water is slowly pooling, and then all of a sudden it goes zoop in those low-lying areas. So, still dangerous,
Mhm.
especially if you're walking or driving through it, but it's not quite the sweeping water like what you would typically think of when you're thinking of flash flooding.
Right. Fortunately, we have, a little bit of a different, hydrological setup here, different topography. So we benefit a little bit from that. But like you say, even a couple of inches on a certain area of road can suddenly drop out, to 6 or 8 inches. And then all of a sudden your car is floating and that's it. You've lost complete control. So as silly as the rhyme sometimes sounds when we say it on the air, turn around, don't drown is your best method for survival. Now, this kind of connects to our next topic here because you can't have rain without water vapor in the air. And it seems to me and to all my viewers who stop me in the streets that this has been one of the stickiest summers we have ever had. Now, I did get the same complaint last year, which means this year's probably even stickier. I'm assuming you're all on the same page, and dew points have been huge.
Yes, yeah, it's been very muggy here. I've had people in the station, in my local grocery store say the same thing. Rich, boy, it seems muggy. Is something going on? Now, just to know that there's another side to that equation. These last couple of mornings here in Detroit, we've had dew points in the upper 40s. So it's been unusually dry the last couple of days, almost makes it feel like, early September, when you walk outside, I go water my flowers, first thing in the morning. And yesterday morning, I was thinking about putting on a sweatshirt. I mean, I know that's crazy, but for as muggy as it's been, for the last 6 to 8 weeks, these last couple of days have been quite dry, and nobody's complaining. That's for sure. I'm walking through the hallways of the building, and people are like, "Yay, yay!"
Yeah, we had
So,
a couple of
so
hoodie and pumpkin spice latte days there too, but then it went right back to hot and sticky.
yes, it's building over the next 36 hours here in Michigan. The heat, the humidity are all coming back in full force. And, to that I say, be careful what you wish for because, soon enough, the football season starts, preseason, and then we're going to be into August. And, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, Emily, how's it
Exactly.
down your way?
Yeah, it's the same messaging here too. And I've actually been kind of surprised because it has been oppressive. Just really high dew point temperatures that we've been dealing with throughout the Chicagoland area. Really, for the majority of the month of July, we've been seeing dew points that are in the 70s, which that's when dew points really start to get very uncomfortable and just it feels really sticky out. And that's where we're going to stay for the next couple of weeks. But I've been really surprised at most people that I've talked to and viewers that I run into. They're like, oh, but it's temporary. It's okay. We don't get this all the time. But I think what's really setting it apart from other years is yes, it has felt very relentless throughout the month of June, the month of July so far, but in May, typically we're enjoying really beautiful days with highs in the 70s, close to 80 degrees already in the Chicagoland area. And we didn't have that. So everyone kind of feels like we went straight from, something that feels like March or April weather into July. We didn't really have that ramping up season. So I think maybe that too makes it feel a little more extreme to a lot of folks because we didn't have time to acclimate to it.
Right, like the human equation in there, right? That you just weren't used to it and takes a while to kind of gear up. And then, as Rich pointed out, you just kind of get in the flow of those hot, sticky days and you get a couple of fall days just to keep you on your toes. And we don't talk politics, and we're not going to start here, but I do want to talk a bit about the connection between this stickier atmosphere and climate change, right? And really just focusing on the fact that our climate has warmed, and a warmer climate means that we can hold more moisture. Do you think the general public, do you think that messaging is getting out? Do people understand that?
People are understanding it. I think people are more interested to learn about it as well. I think the message is better received now because we have been experiencing a much more humid year. So it's making people ask questions. And to me, that's a wonderful thing, right?
Mhm.
I love educating the public on things like that. And it gives us a really great opportunity to say, oh, so it is feeling more humid to you. Well, let me explain to you why that is even a possibility as far as just like the fact that the air could be warmer, which means it can hold more moisture, as you just said. So I think the fact that more people are asking questions about it, it's we're moving into, I think, a different time of maybe more open-mindedness surrounding the climate change debate.
Rob, I've used the word dew point more in these last 6 to 8 weeks than I have used in any stretch in my 28 years. So
Mhm.
people are talking about dew point, and it's, as you both know, it's not an easy definition to dew point. I mean, it is what it is. We know what it is, but to get the general public to understand what dew point is, it's a little tedious, and I do my best when I'm in Target, when I'm in Kroger, and they ask me about dew point. I let them have it. I say,
Yeah.
"This is what it is. This is what it is," and they look at me and they shake their head.
Sure. Yeah, the folks that are still kind of stuck on relative humidity, it's tough to kind of like get them over to the dew point
Yeah.
wagon. And yeah, I've used the same phrase, it's a measurement of water vapor in the air. It's a measurement of water vapor in the air. Like so many times I feel like repetitive, but the viewers, I think, like you're pointing out, Rich and Emily, are starting to get that. And I think Emily makes a great point. Now that there's a like me factor to it, like I'm feeling the change, what's going on, it's a better opportunity to kind of have that conversation. The other thing I get asked about, and this was something, just in the last couple of years that has kind of gotten on my radar, if you'll pardon the weather pun, is corn sweat. Adding some more moisture because of these huge corn crops. That is a fascinating concept to me about how the choice of agriculture in a given area can impact the sweatiness of our summer.
Yeah, well, for me in these situations, let me just tell you, I don't mind living in a very urban area because we are feeling so much of the effects of it. But certainly mid to late July, the forecast that we're going to be dealing with here has so much heat, so much humidity, and corn sweat really is playing a large factor in that because just to our west, where a lot of these weather patterns are coming to us from, is Iowa. What do we know about Iowa? It is corn everywhere, right? So these plants are able to, we have evapotranspiration that's happening, meaning that these plants are giving off water and water vapor into the atmosphere. And that, what do we know about that? It's increasing the humidity, increasing those dew point temperatures. So, that's something that a lot of people have asked me about recently, which I think it's so cool that a lot of these sciencey terms and phenomenons are, really taking hold in the headlines, the news headlines, because I think we've had a really great opportunity in the last couple of years to teach people different things that we don't always have time to talk about on the news.
Yeah, I
That's an
completely agree.
outstanding point, Emily. It is. One of my best friends here in Southern Michigan, and Emily, since you're from this area, you know where Armada, Michigan is.
Yeah.
And my best friend is a retired machinist, and he has about 80 acres, and he has soybeans and he has corn that he actually like rents out. It's his property, but other people work the fields. But I was just up there last weekend and walking through, and it's been a little wet up here for the corn. There is quite a bit of corn grown in Michigan, soybean as well. Uh, and it's interesting because usually by this time in the summer, things are kind of drying out, but this summer, it's been kind of wet. And so my friend was asking me, boy, we could use 5 or 6, 7 days of nice dry weather. And I said, that's really not in the forecast. But it's all interesting how it's connected. I could bore you to death with the things that I'm interested in. I could bore you to death. My kids, my daughters, they're like, Dad, no more, no more.
Well, that wasn't part of the pitch of this
Oh yeah.
podcast to bore people to death, but I think you're wrong about that. I think people are probably very interested in your experiences over the years. But I have to get you to do the hand map. Armada, Michigan is where on the thumb and the.
Armada, Michigan is in Macomb County. It's in northern Macomb County, so it's just north of Detroit by maybe 40 miles.
All right, so it's
And if you're in
right
the
about
area,
here.
everybody, go to the Armada Fair. It's
Oh,
one of the best.
All right, very exciting stuff.
big doings. That's coming up, actually. Also, in that same part of Macomb County is Romeo, and Romeo has the famous Peach Festival, which is also coming up. These are pure Michigan things, but we welcome all of you from
Yes.
Wisconsin, from
There
Illinois.
you go.
Come to Michigan. It's a lot of fun.
This has become part weather blog, part visitors association blog, so podcast, whatever. So we appreciate that. And wherefore art thou, Romeo? Macomb County, I guess, is the
There
answer
you
to
go.
that one. I'm sure that it is a joke that's been made many times in that county. All right, you talked a bit about the different scientific terms, right? And sometimes as meteorologists, we cringe a little when things get overused. Polar vortex. We're all like, oh
Mhm.
no, here we go. Now, the one I'm hearing all the time, heat dome. What do you guys think? Is that heat dome, is it good that people are learning this one? Or maybe should we be re-educating?
I think it's a good visual for people.
Yeah.
I think it's a good way for people to visualize what's happening with the atmosphere. But yes, it's one of those, grabby things, and a heat dome, if you will. Essentially, all we're working with here is we have a high pressure system. It's parked right here. Under high pressure systems, we have sinking air. So it's allowing the heat to build. Typically under a high, you don't have a lot of cloud cover. So as you guys know, the sun's just kind of beating down. We have sinking air, which also warms the air. But I think it's a good visual term for people to hear. Is it the most scientific thing that we learned when we were in meteorology school? No. But that's part of the job too, is just being really great communicators. And so when things like this happen and really grab the headlines, I think it just, again, allows us to share that knowledge and help people visualize what's happening. And then, when everybody around you starts understanding more of your weather world, it makes our jobs easier to convey the forecast.
Rich?
Outstanding. I mean, it's right on the money. The other thing that we get, and you do as well, where you're located, is the ring of fire around the heat dome. We get these clusters of storms, and sometimes they come at strange hours of the day. To get these overnight storms, and we've had that here in Michigan in the last 4 to 6 weeks. So in addition to the heat dome that we're talking about, I like to point out that around the dome, you can get some active weather, and we will likely get some more active weather, in the next 4, 5, 6 days. So it's all interesting stuff. I know you find it that way, Emily and Rob. It is very interesting. So trying to convey that to people at home, that's a bit of a challenge, but I think we're all up for the challenge.
I think you're right. I love Emily's take that it's an opportunity to educate, and I think you're right. You get the buzzword going, and then you take that and you kind of run with it. Another opportunity to educate is to reach out to pet owners. I'm not sure. I have a dog, Martina, the meteorologist, I call her, and
That's so
I.
clever.
Well, she knows when storms are coming because she's petrified of them. So the
Aw.
irony for being a meteorologist dog works out pretty well. Do you guys have pets?
Yes, I have a large 75-pound black lab. So yeah, I got a big old girl at home.
Rich?
Now, I have a koi pond in my backyard
That
that I've
counts.
had for almost 20 years,
Oh, wow.
but our dog, she passed away a few years ago.
Oh,
She was a big, well, I don't want to offend dog people, but she was our great dog. She was part shepherd, part husky, and part idiot. She had
Aw.
equal parts, and she was
I
a
totally get
gentle,
that.
yeah, she was a gentle giant of a dog. But her being the husky thing, she wasn't really thrilled with the hot weather. But she was good in the backyard. But she's been gone a few years.
Yeah, well, then that's good. We can all relate to this because I think, we've done a pretty good job of educating the public on how to protect themselves. But sometimes I think reminders need to be made. Even the best, pet parents, as they sometimes like to call themselves, I don't necessarily remember. I know lately I've been really stressing, when people get out for a walk with their dog. If you're going to go for a long walk on a hot day, it's not just you that needs that water bottle. Don't just drag the Stanley around. You need something for, Fido or Rex or whatever. Do you find that there's, an acknowledgement of that in your area, like especially in Chicago, Emily, because, getting the dog out of the high rises for a few minutes to have their, daily business, you still have to be protective.
Well, one thing I can say about Chicago is I think there are more resources for dogs downtown than there are for people,
Oh, okay.
which is wonderful.
Wow.
I mean, almost every single restaurant in a lot of these like restaurant districts, they have dog bowls out full of water. So it's a very regular thing to see when
Oh, that's
you're
great.
in the city. Yes, and a lot of these places they are dog friendly, and they'll find they'll put up umbrellas, make sure your dog has shade if your dog is out and about. But I will say, coming from a market in Michigan where that was much more rural, it's something that I didn't have to think about so much because, well, we would just let our dog out the backyard and then they would just like come in when they're ready. And when you're in the city, it's a lot different because your walks are much more purposeful. And a lot of times people will go out and they'll walk for a mile or two, not thinking about the paws of their dogs, right? And how hot the difference is between blacktop and cement.
Mhm.
So those things, I think, being in a really urban area makes people a lot more aware. I'm certainly more aware than I ever was before I moved to the city and actually had to physically walk my dog down the street
Right.
rather than just let her out.
Right. Can't just let her out of the backyard as easily when you
Hmm.
live in a, major metropolitan area. You finding similar stuff, Rich?
I do. In my neighborhood, there's plenty of dogs. My next door neighbor has a big golden lab, very happy dog. What bothers me is when I see people with their puppies out in this hot weather
Mm.
because puppies are a lot more susceptible to the heat. And uh, sometimes I debate like whether I should say something to these people that I don't know who have these puppies out. And sometimes I just do it. I mean, I'm looking out for the dog. I don't want to get into other people's business. But the puppies really shouldn't be out for extended periods in the heat because it can fry them. I mean, you know what I'm talking
Sure. Mhm.
about. So, yeah, we have so much water here in Michigan. We have many inland lakes and rivers, and so there are places to go in Metro Detroit to get some relief, with the dog, with the kids. In fact, tomorrow I think I'll be out at Proud Lake State Park taking a little
Perfect.
hike, and perhaps I'll jump in because there's a nice swimming spot there. So
There you go.
think of your pets. Think of your pets.
Yeah, and it's the things that you don't necessarily think of right away, like the hydration, because I think, the dog probably has a great water bowl at home, but you don't necessarily think about it when you're out on a walk and it's hot and it's sticky and all, mammals essentially feel the same kind of stuff. And then as Emily pointed out, the impact of blacktop on paws and how quickly it can heat up and to be mindful of that. Same in the winter when those streets are covered in salt and they're freezing cold. It can be
Hmm.
you wouldn't walk in your bare feet. Probably should try to do something to help the dog out as well. And Rich, you make a great point about puppies versus older dogs, and no living thing should be left in a locked car for more than 5 seconds when we get through these heat domes because puppies, dogs, you might think, oh, it's a such and such a breed, it's from the south or whatever, it's going to be fine. No, it's not. It's going to heat up like an oven in there, and it's not 5 minutes, right? You think you're going to zip into the pet store, going to
Hmm.
get some dog food, and I'm going to race back out. Trust me, the pet store would rather have you bring the puppy in.
Well, and kind of piggybacking off of, the puppy thing, but pivoting it to kids. One thing I've noticed, I have one daughter, so and she's 5 years old, so she's kind of getting to the point where she's very vocal about everything.
Mhm.
But she, what I've noticed, I'm so hot when we're like out and about, and I'm like, gosh, aren't you hot? Like, don't you want to go back? And she's like, no, I'm good. And you can see like her face is just so red. She is sweating, but like kids, similar to puppies, you can't keep them still. They're bouncing all around.
Right.
They don't really acknowledge, they don't want the fun to end. So that's how a child views it, is they don't want the fun to end of being outside. They're not so much thinking about how they're feeling and what that heat could be doing to their body. So that's when we have to be the bad guys and be like, we're going inside.
Yeah, time to wrap it up. Now you're right. I think kids, pets, they don't necessarily acknowledge it. And you're right. They don't want to stop chasing the tennis ball or playing whatever they're playing in the backyard, whatever the case may be. All right, we got a couple minutes left here, but we are heading into meteor season, right? Perseids come up in August. We've got a few other little meteor showers leading up to it. Looks hopefully like we'll get some good viewing, at least on a few of these nights. So was curious as to whether or not you guys are stargazers.
Definitely a stargazer, but now for me, I'm either going to Michigan, I'm going to Indiana, I'm going to Wisconsin because we
Okay.
are just, we're flooded with lights around here. So the viewing, you really have to get pretty far from the city for us.
It's the same in Metro Detroit, but over the years, there's great stargazing up in the thumb of Michigan, and it's really
Ah,
not all that far from Metro Detroit. It's a couple hours north, and you can really be in some, have a really dark sky where you can see the Milky Way. So I encourage our viewers to check the stars out, check the meteors, and also the International Space Station. On
yeah.
its passes when it comes over this part of the Great Lakes. I mean, it's, as you know, sometimes it's very easy to see in an evening sky, and so I get them to go out and take a look. Get them
Yeah,
thinking.
we like
Science,
to.
science.
Yeah, because it's something you can look up and easily share as well. As far as the meteors go, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Milwaukee metro area, same as Detroit and Chicago. You got to get away.
Hmm.
Even to see a decent constellation, you got to get out of the Milwaukee metro areas, out of the urban areas in general. Some of the best stargazing I've had recently, just a couple weekends up in Door County, very much, a rural area, almost up into the UP of Michigan, Rich, well away from any significant big stores. There's no chains up there other than the Wiggly to sell some groceries. And so you get this beautiful, almost zero light pollution view of the sky. And, even in those conditions, though, I tend to try to push back a little bit on some of the hype that these meteor showers get because, you'll hear these, 100 meteors an hour. That would be, if you had some sort of perfect viewing conditions that really don't even exist and you happen to hit the sweet spot of timing. So it's important, I think, also to communicate to our viewers, you get out there. But I don't like to overhype it because the last thing you want to do is say you're going to see this star shower and it's good, and then they look and they see two and they're like, "What's Haswell talking about?" Is it? Do you think that some of this stuff, because of social media and everybody wants to click, do you think some of this stuff has been overplayed, and do you think that's kind of hurting the hobby of stargazing? One of my favorite things to do.
I think you're right. There's a lot of obviously headlines that people see, and it's, we're grabbing for clicks, right? We want to get all the clicks and make those dollars. So unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of, I think, hype around events like this. So what you were saying is it's really refreshing, that I think that should be the message that we have, right? It should be like, okay, yes, hundreds of meteors, yes, but when you head out, what should your expectations be? And I think while those might not be the grabbiest of headlines, I do think it's important to send those messages.
Sounds good. All right. Well, happy stargazing. Everybody stay cool. Try to battle the humidity as best you can. Rich, soak up the last of the fall type days before the heat dome gets back into your area. And we'll meet again in a couple of weeks for more Isobar, the highs and lows of meteorology.